As we wind on down the road, our shadows taller than our souls. It's Jason Abraham, the shadow teacher, and this is going to be my journey of awakening, part 4. And today we're going to talk about the shadow, facing the devil, facing the dragons. And at this point, our story starts. I'm still in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm still training in mind-body practices, Shaolin Kung Fu, Bagua, Xingyi, Tai Chi, combat sport of boxing. I am still playing music. I'm playing with a great group of guys who I love, get along with. We've got a fun cover band. We're making a little bit of money, trying to make more, but still we're enjoying each other, having a good time. I've got a creative project. I'm on YouTube doing a project that's inspired by the themes of pro wrestling, and a new possibility opens up. There's an indie wrestling company that opens up in my neighborhood. They're doing shows at a theater every week. They have a wrestling school to train anyone who wants to get into professional wrestling and give it a shot. And my intentions are to get into there. I have a character in mind, and I want to go start learning the craft of pro wrestling and going for it at this point. But a crisis shows up in my life. An adult who has been the support, that one person I could go to all my life, no matter how dark it got, no matter how confused I was or how lost I felt. This one particular adult was always a source of love and comfort, and always reminded me to keep going and to believe in myself. This is my grandmother, and she had a turn in her health and needed full-time live-in care. And I felt that I owed it to her, to go and be with her. My mother was with her, but my mom couldn't do it anymore. I felt the least I could do was to be with her, and be with her when she needed that the most, because she was always there for me. So I felt like sort of the situation was much like Luke Skywalker in Empire Strikes Back, where his friends are in trouble in Cloud City and Bespin, and then Yoda says, if you go, you may sacrifice all that we have worked on here. And there's gravity in that choice. There was a consequence either way. So I chose to be with my grandmother and be with her. And she passed away a few months later, and I was there with her in her time of passing, and it was a blessing, as I had that firsthand experience of feeling someone's soul move out of their body and transition to the other side, and I could feel that and experience that, and it was something that was a true blessing for me to be with her at that time. But I was still very sad, because her presence was never going to be with me in this physical realm again, the way that I had been used to. And even though I could still feel her presence in the home, she hadn't completely moved on to wherever her soul is now. At that time, she was still with me, because I was just in despair. I was having a hard time facing life. I was pretty depressed. I did not want to feel what I was feeling, and so I went to exercise, overtraining, to numb my feelings, numb my sadness. And I'd overtrained to the point where I was just not paying attention to my body. I'd injured my knee, and I kept training on it because I just did not want to sit with what I was feeling. I'd met some people who were into mixed martial arts in the North Carolina area, and I started to train with them. And then one day I was wrestling on a bad knee, had defended a takedown, and boom, loud pop, there went my ACL. did not have any health insurance at this time, so I could not go get surgery on it. So I was just sitting with my body no longer responding in the capacity that I was used to, and I went into a deeper depression. Now, eventually, I was able to get my knee functional again and get back into training, but my opportunities in Atlanta had passed me by, and the chances of me going into wrestling was just not a realistic option at this point. So I just chose to stay in North Carolina. I felt called to pick up the pieces and figure out a new life here. And I felt a sense of shame too. At this point, I felt like a failure. I felt like my resolve to build a life based on my creativity that I failed at. And I said, now it's time. I guess I need to go into the matrix. I need to figure out how to make a more conventional life. And so I had this overall feeling of shame, this burdensome weight on my shoulders that I was carrying. And I got a job doing personal training at some point, and was committed to doing my best at it, making a life, but there was always part of me that wanted to get back on the stage or get back into a performance context. And at this point, I was just pushing that down to the back burner. I believed I could still do it at some point, but it was just not at the forefront. I eventually got into a situation where I got involved in someone going through a legal situation that got me, who was on the outskirts, pulled into it. And I'm not going to name any names to protect people, but I had this particular situation brought my awareness to the reptilian consciousness. There was a person who was angry and was suing people, just filing lawsuit after lawsuit in the attempt to regain control over the lives of other people. And this person was in a, if you even want to call them a person, because I don't know how human they actually were, they were attempting to bring the misery and pain they were feeling and put that to other people. And I was essentially someone who was on the outskirts of a situation, but was basically brought into it as a way to punish someone else. And again, what I saw was when someone identifies so heavily as a victim, they open up the portal for dark forces to get at the driver's seat. And I never knew this person before my particular context of interacting with them. So I don't know if they were human before, but what I saw was I felt a presence of pure evil in a human vessel that I've never felt before. Even looking in this guy's eyes, it was like something non-human was behind it. And for me, I had never believed these types of things existed. So I was relatively naive, but before going into this, what I found is I'm face to face with the force of evil. And everything I was trained in, all the martial arts training, all the disciplines I had, I couldn't use any of that. As if I used that on him, it just made him stronger. It was sort of the situation like where Batman is fighting the Joker in The Dark Knight, and Batman's punching him in the face, and the Joker is just laughing because he knows that his darkness has corrupted Batman's soul, and that his desire to create mayhem is coming and just burn the world to the ground is coming to fruition. So with this particular individual, there's nothing that I could do without the consequence of harming other people involved or bringing more harm to myself or my family with the abilities and skills that I had to fight back. So I literally went into a place where I just felt depressed and helpless, and I felt more shame. I felt by me being involved had brought more harm to other people and brought harm to my family, and I felt a heavier burden of shame on my shoulders. And eventually, well, let me say at this point too, my powers to manifest, I was literally manifesting the opposite of what I wanted at this time. I would set an intention, and the opposite would start to show up in my world, which created me an even deeper identifying, or a deeper identity into identifying as a failure, an identity with shame, identity with the opposite of what I wanted to believe in and be. And all that I believed that I was proving to be a fraud. Everything I'd identified with in the past, the world was showing me more evidence that I was a fraud and that I was useless, and I just kept believing in that. At this time, though, I did have some gifts that got me through. I was introduced to the practice of yoga, and that by getting in my body and working on alignment and breath, that translated to a spiritual alignment where I was able to have this one time where I was able to get out of the fear and confusion in my head, and which is essentially what a lawsuit is. A lawsuit's all, it's mental and it's financial warfare. It's trying to break you mentally and creating chaos and fear, and it to break you financially, to take your monetary resources and your ability to move freely in that way, and they're pretty damaging if you ever get involved in that situation. But the practice of yoga was able to get me back in my body, get me back in my breath. And I taught a Silver Sneakers class, which is a fitness class for senior citizens at this time. And each day I was a mess going in, just struggling with this. But the people were so kind to me there. They always lifted me up in prayer. And one of the people in the class, she gave me a psalm and said, "Jason, say this every day, and God will be there to protect you." I believe it was Psalm 71, which was basically, the content of that was protection and calling on the presence of God to protect against wrongful persecution. And I said that psalm, had my Bible opened every day, and I was not a Christian at this point. And I felt the presence of God with me, and just God helped me through every moment in getting through the day at that particular time in life. And it was a challenge. But at that time, again, I learned of the illusions that my ego had set up, and just saw all that destroyed. But the gift was being able to reconnect with the truth in me and get through the situation, and to see the world for what it was, and to see a place in the world that I was ignorant of. I was able to confront evil. I was able to see evil in a very real, visceral way outside, and I was also able to see some of the evil that was in me that came up to the front, because that's essentially a lot of what I was manifesting when I was in this particular point was my own shadow. And I was, again, this individual cast a black magic spell on me. So I was under demonic attack this whole time. And it wasn't until I got clear of this and got through it that I was able to move to the next stage of awakening. But it was the ultimate lesson in evil, and again, the darkness of my own soul and the darkness that is out there in the world. And it's here that I learned of gaslighting. I learned of narcissistic abuse. I saw it on me. I saw it on the other people who were involved in this, who were actually in a much more intense situation than this individual than I was. Again, I was just someone who was being held as a hostage to torture someone else, to try to get someone else to make a decision to cave into this individual's terrorist demands. And I was face to face with darkness and was able to see the sun shining again. And again, for anyone who's going through a dark night of the soul, know that what's happening is you're getting something revealed to you. You're getting revelation of information that your soul needs to learn in order to find its true path. Much of what was revealed to me, what was destroyed, was a false path for me. It was something that had already served its time, but I was still identifying with, and I needed to let go. And another thing that was revealed to me was me pleasing other people, making decisions to do things for other people that were not in alignment for my highest good, and putting my highest good on the side to go on and do something for other people. So those were two big lessons I needed to address. This particular situation showed up in a way that I was not listening to before. So that's all I'm going to go. There's so much more to this situation, but this video is getting really fucking long. If you're going through a dark night of the soul, if you're facing the shadow, it's not easy. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be just flooded with doubt, pain. It's going to seem like nothing that you're familiar with is working out for you, but hang in there. Just hang in, stay with a practice that keeps you in your body and breath, and listen, just connect with your heart. Your heart's still going to guide you to the right people who are going to give you support to get through that and get through the resistance to that situation. And just, if you, with that resolve, you stay with it, you'll make it to the other side. And then I will see you on the other side. Class dismissed.